This is PPC Zone December 2025 B2B Outside the Box. I'm your host, Jyll Saskin Gales. I use the pronouns she and her. I'm a Google Ads coach and the founder of the Inside Google Ads course, podcast, and book. I created PPC Zone in 2022 to elevate new perspectives and insights in our industry. Whether you're tuning in live, watching the replay on YouTube or LinkedIn, or listening in your podcast app, here's what you can expect. 3 speakers will share their expertise in a 7-minute presentation each. Then we'll answer your questions in a live panel and wrap it all up in under an hour. Thank you to Cookiebot by Usercentrics for sponsoring PPC Zone. If you're running ads in Europe, Google's consent mode is not optional anymore. And that's where Cookiebot by Usercentrics comes in, to easily manage user consent on your website. And of course, it connects seamlessly with Google and Microsoft's consent mode, so you can gather more data to power your campaigns and get the best possible ROI. You can sign up for a free trial of Cookiebot by Usercentrics, plus get 10% off your first 6 months, all while supporting PPC Zone by going to consent.ppc.zone. That's consent.ppc.zone. First up in the zone is the paid marketing manager at Quality Bearings Online, where he specializes in a fascinating niche, B2B e-commerce. I've been following him online for quite some time, and I am honored to bring this Brighton SEO and performance MCR speaker to the PPC Zone stage. Today, he's here to share his perspective on B2B Microsoft advertising. Welcome, Matt Beswick.
Thank you very much for that lovely introduction, Jyll. As Jyll mentioned, I'm Matt Beswick. I'm paid marketing manager at a company called Quality Bearings Online, who are a UK-based exporter of bearings, lubricants, and engineering spares to many different countries across the world. And today that I'd like to share my perspective and give you a bit of food for thought about introducing or maybe just improving how you're using Microsoft advertising in your PPC strategy. First of all, I'd just like to set the scene and champion the case for taking Microsoft seriously as part of that PPC strategy. So on the screen now, you can see our stats over 2025 across the 2 main PPC platforms. We've got Google and Microsoft. You can see that despite many more sessions and many more purchases, the revenue is not that different across the 2 platforms, with Google just generating 23% more revenue than Microsoft for us. But Microsoft spends 48% lower than we spend on Google, which has generated a 46% higher ROAS on our Microsoft platform, mainly down to a 50% higher average order value. And most interestingly, probably from a B2B perspective, is that calls and form submissions remain relatively stable across both platforms. And most B2B marketers will probably know that that's where most of the big juicy inquiries and orders will come from, those phone calls and those form submissions, which is really interesting given the significantly reduced spend across Microsoft. And it also shows that Microsoft is a much more efficient platform in our business, and probably could be for a lot of other B2B businesses as well. So I imagine a lot of people are wondering how you managed to get those results. But before we really get into the how, I thought I would probably explain a bit of the why around why some people in B2B will see better results in Microsoft. The main one, and the one that is most talked about, is in B2B will more often than not be targeting a slightly older demographic, a demographic that fits into job titles where they've been promoted to make decisions. They've got purchasing power, and that demographic is much more highly represented in Microsoft than it is on Google. Secondly, you'll often see less competition, so lower CPCs. But on that same point, you'll more frequently see, if you have got competition on Microsoft, really poor execution. A lot of people will be really spending a lot of time on Google and neglecting their Microsoft campaigns, and that gives B2B e-com sellers quite a good opportunity to match a steal on their competition. And a third one, which I learned at a PPC Live event recently, is that a lot of big businesses in the US now have a Microsoft-only policy, so they're not allowed to download apps like Google Chrome. So if you're wanting to sell to those businesses and you're not marketing on Microsoft, then you're likely missing an opportunity and you're unlikely to sell to any of those businesses. Now we'll get into a bit of the why, and the first and most important point that I would always raise to anybody that's starting out on Microsoft is to try and come up with a platform-specific strategy. Microsoft users shop differently, they buy different products, they tend to spend more money. So if they're doing all those different things in different ways, you should treat them different to the way that you're treating your Google customers. The first way that I tend to do that is avoid any Google imports. Your campaigns are likely to need different budgets, work on different bidding strategies. And if you're importing from Google, it'll often override the settings that you've put into your Microsoft campaigns. And you'll often see people that have got horror stories in the past about Google imports coming through, changing a bid budget that they've set at, say, £20 a day, and then the import then changes it to £200 to match your Google strategy, your Google campaigns. On a similar point around that value-based bidding, I often consolidate campaigns down, take consolidation to the absolute extreme. So where I may have 25 plus campaigns in Google, I'll be running less than 10 in Microsoft, given that there's lots and less data points, lots less conversions running through those Microsoft campaigns. You'll want to make sure those are consolidated down and you've got quite a lot of data density for the campaigns to work properly. If you are just starting out, I would always encourage people, especially at Quality Bearings Online, we've got over 50,000 SKUs. So creating search campaigns for all those separate SKUs or product types is difficult. So we leaned heavily on DSA to start with to work out which products work well and then start to push those forward in their own independent search campaigns. But initially, really lean on DSA. And these final 2 points I will come on to a bit more in my next few slides, but definitely try Microsoft's version of PMax. It is different. It is very different to how Google works. But one thing that I will stress, and I'll show you on the next slide, is that it does work. And then the final thing around the platform-specific strategies, I call these the Microsoft differentiators, but use the things that are only available on Microsoft to your advantage. So on this slide, you can see an example of me showing that the PMax does actually work. You can see that when it's given healthy budgets, it's generating healthy amount of conversions, a lot of revenue coming through to our business, and at a very, very healthy ROAS. I tend to run it alongside shopping, so we've got both of those running alongside each other, and you can see that by doing that, we're still managing to get lots and lots of conversions coming through. And one of the main things that I will say about Microsoft's Performance Max, if you are protective of your brand and you've got brand stuff in there to protect any Performance Max spend on brand, so you've got your negatives in there much differently to Google, Microsoft will actually protect your brand. It respects it. It won't go shopping in auctions for your brand. And you can see that in the search query reports. And then these are the differentiators that I mentioned previously, things that are only available for you to use on Microsoft, but will really help you scale your Microsoft spend. You can see in the bottom right-hand corner when we introduced some of these things and scaled spend on Performance Max, when we increased spend, the revenue followed. So the main one being audience ads. We've pushed quite a lot of budget recently into audience ads with tailored messages to our type of users. Audience ads on Microsoft are significantly better than they are on Google. The placements that you get there are much better. Another thing that's Microsoft only is impression-based remarketing, so you can get access to people that have previously looked or seen one of your ads but maybe shopped with somebody else, so it gives you an idea that they're in market. Obviously, we've got LinkedIn-based audiences, which for any B2B marketer should be an absolute B2B heaven. You're finding out real in-depth information about what the businesses are that you should sell into, what type of people you sell into, And that should be a real heaven for any B2B seller. And then the final thing that we've recently got access to, which is a real favorite of mine, is feed-based audience ads. So we can now start to put our shopping feeds into those audience placements and get coverage on all of Microsoft's network. So to finish my presentation today, I just want to leave everybody with these two questions. One, is it time that you stopped ignoring Microsoft? Or two, do you simply need to start treating the platform independently? That's everything I've got to speak about today. If anybody wants to speak to me about Microsoft or Google Shopping or any of the things that I talk about frequently on LinkedIn, then you can follow me on this QR code here. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you so much, Matt, for sharing your unique perspective and insights with us in the zone. As Matt said, you can find him on LinkedIn to keep following his insights and to get in touch with him. And if you have a question for Matt, you can go ahead and type it into the chat if you're watching this live now on YouTube or LinkedIn, and we will get to your questions during the upcoming live panel. Before our next speaker, thank you again to Cookiebot by Usercentrics for sponsoring PPC Zone. If you're running ads in Europe, Google's consent mode is not optional anymore. And that's where Cookiebot by Usercentrics comes in to easily manage user consent on your website. And of course, it connects seamlessly with Google and Microsoft's consent mode. So you can gather more data to power your campaigns and get the best possible ROI. You can sign up for a free trial of Cookiebot by Usercentrics, plus 10% off your first 6 months, all while supporting PPC Zone by going to consent.ppc.zone. That's consent.ppc.zone. Next up in the zone is the inquisitive marketer. He specializes in campaign management, landing page design, and conversion optimization for B2B advertisers. I've also been trying to get him onto the virtual stage for more than a year, so I am thrilled to have him here with us at PPC Zone today to share 3 B2B Google Ads traps. Are these best practices wasting your money? It is with great pleasure that I introduce you to Aldwin Neekon. Welcome, Aldwin.
Thank you. Hi, everyone. If your B2B Google Ads campaign is failing and you can't figure out why, it might be because you're doing everything right. I've worked with some really difficult Google Ads accounts where they'd gone through several agencies and in-house people, and they were mystified about why their campaigns were failing. And in retrospect, I noticed something surprising about all of them. In every case, they had implemented best practices that almost always work in a B2C situation, but in their B2B situation, these same practices were causing big problems. So what do I mean by B2B situation? First of all, your target market is smaller, so you're getting lower traffic to your ads. You are not selling to millions or hundreds of thousands or thousands. You're targeting a really small number of specific decision makers. Second, in a B2B situation, your offerings are usually more complex. This is often the case for my B2B tech clients. The market doesn't even know what to search for because the offering is complex or innovative, and this happens. Maybe the category doesn't even exist yet because you're so new to the market. And third, what you're selling has higher prices and longer sales cycles. And these two things often go together. Expensive things usually take longer to buy. And in a business, this usually means they need the approval of a larger group, which again, takes time. Those are the characteristics of what I call a B2B situation. And in that context, I'm going to give you 3 examples of how best practices that almost always work in B2C can cause a B2B campaign to fail. The first best practice we'll look at is A/B testing. My first Google Ads client had originally hired me as a fractional VP marketing, but a few weeks into it, the pandemic hit, and the CEO said, "Aldwin, forget about the long-term strategy work. We need leads now." I suggested running Google Ads, and he said, "Yeah, we're running Google Ads. We've done it. It doesn't work for us. We've done it a bunch of times." So I had to figure out why it hadn't worked. Well, it turns out one of the reasons they'd spent months running A/B tests in their campaigns, waiting for statistical significance, waiting for the test to finish, but they had nothing to show for it because not enough traffic. So they weren't making decisions, they were paralyzed. In a B2B situation like this, you're not getting hundreds of clicks a day. You might get a dozen clicks. Waiting for months is not an option. So you need to go with an educated gut. Don't let A/B testing paralyze your B2B campaigns. You need to give Google Ads enough time to adjust when you change a budget or a bid strategy, but then you need to make a call and move on. And you can also use tools like Microsoft Clarity that show you what each visitor is doing, so you can more quickly sense how to improve your ads or your landing pages, even with very low traffic. I use this tool all the time for every client. The second best practice to watch out for is beautiful content. A lot of B2B CEOs and marketers have B2C brand envy and want to create the kind of content that works really well for B2C brands, but this can backfire. Another client of mine had hired a really good creative agency who'd made them a beautiful, compelling video that they were using as a YouTube ad. It racked up hundreds of thousands of views and 0 conversions. Why? Because it was designed like a prestige B2C commercial. It was beautiful and intriguing, and it had this music that drew you in. And that's the problem. It drew everybody in, whether or not they were the target audience. So your content needs to be immediately clear about the problem that you solve, who you solve it for, and who it isn't for. You don't have to be boring, but you do have to get to the point, and you have to be attractive to your audience while somehow finding a way to be repulsive to everybody else. And sometimes that means you can't afford to do what B2C brands do. The final best practice to watch out for: targeting high volume, high intent keywords. Some of you may be asking, isn't this the whole point of Google Ads? High volume, high intent keywords. It is, but let me give you an example of how it can go wrong. Let's say you're an enterprise software company and your solution bundles whatever new technology that you have with a bunch of point solutions that already exist in other offerings. Some marketers might look at the high search volume for those point solutions and get really excited. Look at all this traffic, look at all these clicks. But those are not the customers you're looking for. Those searches belong to people looking for the cheap point solutions. You're selling enterprise software at a higher price point that does a lot more than just those things. So when this happens, you'll probably need to, first of all, avoid those searches. Find what those keywords are, find what those searches are, and avoid them, because they're just going to cost you money as clicks, and they're going to waste your sales team's time trying to qualify them. And then you'll need to step outside of your search campaign and generate awareness and educate the market about your innovation, about your category, so they'll know how to find you. So if your B2B Google Ads campaigns have been falling a little flat, take a look at some of the best practices that your teams have put in place and ask, are they appropriate for our business, or are they actually sabotaging our success? Reach me on LinkedIn or inquisitiveads.com, and we'll continue this conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Aldwin, so much for sharing your unique perspective and insights with us in the Zone. You can find Aldwin on LinkedIn to learn more about B2B Google Ads. And if you have a question for Aldwin, go ahead and type it into the chat if you're watching live on YouTube or LinkedIn right now, and we'll get to your questions during our upcoming live panel. If you're just tuning in, thank you to Cookiebot by Usercentrics for sponsoring PPC Zone. If you're running ads in Europe, Google's consent mode is not optional anymore, and that's where Cookiebot by Usercentrics comes in to easily manage user consent on your website. And of course, it connects seamlessly with Google and Microsoft consent mode, so you can gather more data to power your campaigns and get the best possible ROI. You can sign up for a free trial of Cookiebot by Usercentrics, plus get 10% off your first 6 months, all while supporting PPC Zone by going to consent.ppc.zone. That's consent.ppc.zone. Our final speaker in the Zone today is the head of paid search at Compound Growth Marketing. A veteran PPC marketer, she writes for all the big publications, speaks on all the big stages, and is both one of the most knowledgeable and most generous people in our industry. She's going to share how you can use YouTube to boost B2B paid search performance. Please welcome the one and only Melissa Mackey.
Thank you, Jill. Wow, what an introduction. I appreciate that. I'm excited to talk to everybody today about YouTube ads for B2B, the hidden conversion driver. As Jill mentioned, I'm head of paid search at Compound Growth Marketing. We focus solely on B2B advertisers. So YouTube for B2B is kind of a paradox. It feels like it's really designed more for e-commerce or consumers. People do unboxing, they do demonstrations of products. You see these all over the place. And it doesn't really fit with B2B. The B2B doesn't have things that they unbox, generally speaking. And clients have objections. They say, we tried YouTube, it doesn't convert. And that's really true. YouTube campaigns are rarely going to convert directly for B2B. You're not going to see conversions attributed to those campaigns, or very many of them anyway. However, it does have a powerful influence on lead generation. And I'm going to talk to you with some case studies of how that works. So the first case study is an enterprise B2B SaaS client that we have. They had a couple of solutions they were advertising that had low awareness. So people didn't really understand what these solutions did. It was a little bit confusing, a little bit involved. And they decided they needed to create some videos to kind of explain the value propositions. So we did that and made these videos that educate the prospects before they searched. And then we launched video campaigns. And these had fantastic results. So in the first example for the first solution, they saw a 30% decrease in cost per lead, an improved click-through rate, and an improved conversion rate. So their metrics basically all got better once video ran. In the second example, they also saw a 25% decrease in cost per lead and a doubling of their conversion rate. And this was despite worse front-end metrics. So there were some competitive things that happened in the marketplace for this second solution that led to a little bit lower click-through rate and a higher cost per click, but that was all offset by the improved results they got by having video in market. So they didn't even care that those front-end metrics got worse. So video was really positive for both of these examples. In the second case study, this is a completely different type of business. It's a local B2B business with multiple locations that they were looking to find customers for. And this client came to us and said, hey, we made some videos. They're really cool. We want to run a YouTube campaign to showcase these videos. And so we said, okay. And we launched a YouTube campaign for them, just, as a consideration funnel campaign. They ran it for 5 months. They didn't get any conversions from the YouTube campaign, really not surprising, but some other things were becoming challenging in their business and they decided they just didn't need to keep spending money on it. So we went ahead and paused the video campaigns. When we did that, the cost per lead on their brand campaigns went up by 47%. And at first we thought this was something unrelated to video. We went and did a bunch of other research optimization. And finally, we had exhausted all other options and we came back and said, let's just try the video again and see what happens. And lo and behold, cost per lead immediately went back to where it was before when video was running. And so we said, all right, let's double down. Let's run a demand gen campaign in addition to the video campaign. And so we launched demand gen and cost per lead dropped another 47% below their original baseline. So in this example, the video really helped to drive brand awareness that fueled their search performance. It improved performance on their brand campaigns dramatically. So video has a lot of advantages for B2B. It can help explain complex solutions better than text alone. So in my first example with the enterprise B2B SaaS, it was difficult in a short text ad to explain what the solution did. But when we combined that with video campaigns and that explainer, it really improved the performance. It can build awareness and understanding before the search. And that was the case with the local B2B advertiser. Helped to reinforce their brand with the video, and then people knew who they were dealing with once they performed a search. It can improve your search metrics. This happened with all of the campaigns that we tested. Click-through rate, cost per click, conversion rates improved. And it's budget friendly. So in both of these examples, we spent less than 5% of their total budget on video. It used to be you had to spend $10,000 to $20,000 a month on video campaigns. And I think at one point that was actually a required minimum. That's no longer the case. So if you are holding back because of cost, don't. With a local advertiser, we only spent about $500 a month on video. And it was definitely worth doing. So keys to success here with successful YouTube campaigns: targeting, use custom segments with high performing search keywords. For B2B, I would stay away from the broader audiences, the in-market audiences and the affinity audiences that are pre-baked into Google Ads. Those tend to be too big, too consumer focused, and just not effective for B2B advertising. So instead of using those, we use custom segments with our search keywords. If you're not sure how to do that, go get Jill's book. It will tell you exactly how to set up these audiences. And that's a great resource to have anyway. So go get that anyway. Geography, use precise geo-targeting. So for the local B2B advertiser, we focused on just a couple of locations of theirs that needed some extra help. And even with the enterprise SaaS client, who is a global advertiser, we just focused on a couple of locations, a couple of countries where they really needed help for this particular solution. You have to be precise to avoid wasted spend. For your creative, keep your videos to 15 to 30 seconds and get your brand and logo into the first few seconds if at all possible. Longer videos, although B2B advertisers will come to us and say, I've got this great 2-minute explainer, that's obviously way too long. So you got to cut those down. For bidding, we use target cost per view. We got on all these campaigns, cost per view under a penny. So it's extremely effective in not only boosting your search performance, but also just getting a lot of eyeballs on your ad for a very low cost. Need to have some variety, multiple video variations to minimize fatigue. 2 is the minimum, and the more you have, the better. And just keep rotating them in, especially if you're doing YouTube as an always on. You need to keep things fresh to keep it from wearing out. And then, as I mentioned, budget, small budgets work. These campaigns pay for themselves via lower search cost per lead. So don't worry about that. Just allocate a small percentage of your budget. So takeaways: don't measure YouTube success by direct conversions alone. If you look at just, again, that line of conversions attributed to the campaign, you're going to say it doesn't work, but you need to look at the halo effect on your search campaigns. Look at a before and after and see how performance changed once you launched video. We have seen this with almost every client we have. So it's not just these couple examples that I handpicked. It's literally all of our clients. We're recommending video for everybody at this point because it has such a big impact on search. And start small. Allocate just 5% of your budget to test. And then if for whatever reason it doesn't work for you, you didn't really spend that much money, I look forward to hearing how you all use YouTube campaigns to improve your B2B performance.
Thank you so much, Melissa, for sharing your unique perspective and insights with us in the zone. If you'd like to connect with Melissa Mackey, you can find her on LinkedIn. And if you have a question for her, go ahead and type it into the chat if you're watching this live on YouTube or LinkedIn right now, as we are about to get started with our live panel. Let's bring all of our speakers back on screen now. This is PPC Zone December 2025, and we're talking about B2B Outside the Box. I'm your host, Jyll Saskin Gales. I'm a Google Ads coach and the founder of the Inside Google Ads course, podcast, and book. And I created PPC Zone to elevate new perspectives and insights with our industry. I'm here with Matt Beswick, paid marketing manager at Quality Bearings Online, who just spoke about B2B Microsoft advertising. You're welcome, Nava. I'm here with Aldwin Neekon, founder at Inquisitive Marketer, who just spoke about 3 B2B Google Ads traps. And I'm here with Melissa Mackey, head of paid search at Compound Growth Marketing, who just spoke about using YouTube to boost B2B paid search performance. This event is exclusively sponsored by CookieBot by UserCentrics. You too can easily manage user consent on your website, start your free trial, and support PPC Zone by going to consent.ppc.zone. Welcome to our speakers today. I learned so much. We have questions from the audience. I have questions, so we're going to dive right in. I want to start with you, Matt. I think we have a lot of people watching or listening who are very familiar with Google Ads and not at all familiar with Microsoft Ads. Spoiler alert, I'm also talking about myself. So if someone is intrigued by what you've shared today and wants to get started with Microsoft, what are a few tips you've had for them of either things to make sure they do or make sure they don't do if they're bringing their Google Ads knowledge over to Microsoft Ads?
I think the first thing is the one that I would stress that you don't do is, I mentioned it during my talk, is not to import everything that you've got from Google. it works as an independent platform. The users are very different to the users on Google, and you've obviously got much less data points. So if you've got campaigns that are bringing in borderline close to the amount needed for value-based bidding, say 25, 30 conversions in Google, you're not going to be anywhere near the amount that you need in Microsoft to get those campaigns to work properly. So I think in terms of what to do to start, I would really start small. Start with something that you feel is going to work well. Any campaigns that you've got that are bringing in the most amount of conversions as possible on Google, bring those across to Microsoft and start really small and put as much budget as you can into that and just give it time. Just give it time, really. It will work eventually. It just takes a bit of tinkering and a bit of platform-specific work rather than just taking what you've done on Google before.
Tinkering and time and patience. Got it.
Yeah.
And now we have a question here, I think for Aldwin, though anyone can feel free to jump in, from Chris Richardson on LinkedIn, who says, how realistic is it to expect leads for an incredibly niche audience from a company with up to a 4-year buyer cycle? Chris says they've sort of resigned themselves to using Google Ads for branding and informative purposes only. So we'll start with you, Aldwin, for opening it up. Is that the way to go, or do you have any tips or things Chris might want to try?
I think that's really right on the right track. I think that is the correct way to do it. Like I said in the presentation, sometimes you just have to step outside of search and use the rest of the Google Ads platform and other platforms, LinkedIn ads, Microsoft ads, to find your audience where they are and let them know about you and let them know that you're there for them. You're there to solve the problems that they have.
Absolutely. And then Melissa, you shared some really interesting stories about using YouTube for B2B. And I loved how you were sharing how the impact of YouTube may not be in the YouTube campaign itself, but it's somewhere else in the search campaign. So can you talk a little bit about, especially someone who maybe doesn't work at an agency and doesn't have the same access to analysts and reporting tools, like how might someone figure out if their YouTube campaign is indeed having an impact on their search ad performance? What should they look at and how should they look at it?
Yeah, it's really quite simple. You just look at how your cost per leads were before you launch video, just in the platform, and then look at how it was afterward. That's actually how I did those analyses in my presentation. It wasn't anything fancy. It was just taking platform data and seeing, and some people could say, well, it's not really a true test because you probably were doing other things in the campaigns. But that's true anyway. That's table stakes. Like, you should always be making optimizations. So for, you were saying, Aldwin, forget about these A/B tests being statistically significant. It's not perfect. And we just have to kind of take the wins. And especially with the one client, when we turned it off and the cost per lead went way up, and we turned it back on and it went back down and has stayed down, that it worked, right? Like, don't question it. But yeah, you can just use platform data to make that analysis.
Absolutely. Sometimes we can really overcomplicate it, right? Like, I have a client who we launched Performance Max, and it looked like Performance Max was doing terribly, but it was only advertising one product category. And she had an explosion in sales on her website from that one product category. And so even though we couldn't prove A caused B, we're like, well, there was no other action. There was just A. So let's keep it on. And lo and behold, sales kept up. So the platforms can only tell us so much. Yeah.
Right.
We have a question coming in here from YouTube. Sumit says, I want to ask a question for Google Ads for lead generation. My business is giving services for mobile app development, website development, and e-commerce. So I think the question here is, how might this business owner go about generating leads in Google Ads for their website development or mobile app development company? Maybe everyone can chime in with one idea of generating leads for a website development or mobile app development company. What's one tactic you might recommend?
I would say stick with search.
Stick with search. Okay.
Yeah,
and
make sure that
your services.
Yeah, make sure your conversion tracking is really dialed in, because that's a high volume area and it's competitive. So you've got to make sure you know your tracking is working. That's my tip.
Two very good tips there. Aldwin, Matt, anything to add?
Yeah, I think the fact that Melissa pointed out, it is likely to be a very high volume area, and so any chance that you have to kind of pick the stadium that you want to play in, you know, maybe you're only serving a certain geography, maybe it's specific kind of devices or applications or use cases that you're really, you know, that you can niche down on a little bit, so that you're not getting clicks from all the people who you know, aren't a good fit for your business. I would take those opportunities.
And one more thing I would add as well is differentiation. There are so many website developers and mobile app developers. So with those search ads, with your proper conversion tracking, with your niching down, I would spend a lot of time on your ad copy so that you'll stand out among the dozens of other people offering the exact same service.
And video could help you there too, right? Like if you make a really clever video, that could help you stand out too.
Got it. Well, this next one, I'm going to come to you first, Matt. We have a question from Sophie Logan, your fellow Brit on LinkedIn. And Sophie says, hey, team, is there anything you're looking forward to testing in 2026? I'll start with you, Matt. What are you looking forward to testing in 2026?
I think the main thing for me is probably leaning into what Melissa's just spoke about. We do very little in terms of video at the moment. We're just we've just started on demand gen. I think me and you had a conversation on LinkedIn. We've just started with demand gen using video. So really leaning into video for like B2B e-commerce. It's not normally like a typical use case, but given everything that Melissa's just run through, that's something that we're really looking to push next year. And obviously we can repurpose it across multiple platforms.
Very nice. What about you, Aldwin? What are you excited to test in 2026?
Well, I was excited to hear Melissa talk about video because I've been adding that to my client accounts, and it's been working surprisingly well. And I'm always surprised at how relatively inexpensive it can be to reach a very targeted kind of audience with a very personal or customized message. So I'm going to be doing a lot more of that, and also testing it within the other, like right now, I'm just kind of running a YouTube campaign and a search campaign, and then retargeting between them. But I want to do some more experiments on, you know, how to kind of bring, you know, demand gen formats into it, or PMAX and that kind of thing.
Yes, Melissa, you mentioned the custom segment based on search terms, which is my single favorite audience in all of Google Ads, and a video campaign, I should say, on YouTube, or a demand gen campaign are the best places to use that. So Melissa, these gentlemen were very inspired by your talk for what they want to test. What do you want to test in 2026?
Yeah, I was a little bit inspired by Matt's talk about Microsoft. You know, we don't use them for every client. We do for some, and probably need to lean into that a little bit more. And I loved your tips. I thought that was super helpful. The other thing that we're testing it now, but since it's Q4, which is always a little weird, I want to continue testing in Q1, is AI Max. And I am shocked to hear myself say this, but it's actually working. So, and when you look at the search query reports, they're a disaster, but it is working. We're getting leads and we're getting MQLs. So, I mean, don't question success, I guess. So we're going to keep testing that in 2026.
Well, thank you for mentioning AI Max. Our views will now double because of it. No, I'm joking. AI Max is great to hear about. And something I'm looking forward to testing in 2026 is, it's not out yet, but it's called Journey Aware Bidding. And it's a new type of bidding for lead gen that Google has talked about. It's sort of in like closed betas right now, but they have said it's coming in 2026. And I don't want to be overly optimistic. Like with most new feature launches, I'm sure it's going to have some, you know, dust in the attic and stuff until it gets going. But I do see a lot of promise for that, because it helps address one of the key issues that lead gen advertisers have, is how to feed all those different micro conversions and signals, but then not have it overdo leads and underdo actual qualified leads or sales. So I am excited about Journey Aware Bidding for next year. Thank you so much to all three of you for joining us on PPC Zone today. And thank you to our live audience as well. Our time today is almost up, but our next event will be in February 2026, and we are confirming the lineup right now for all of our 2026 events. So if you would like to apply to speak at PPC Zone, you can do so on our website. That's ppc.zone. Thank you one more time to our sponsor, CookieBot by Usercentrics, for supporting our mission to elevate new perspectives and insights in our industry. You can learn more at consent.ppc.zone. I'm your host, Jyll Saskin Gales. Be sure to follow me on LinkedIn and subscribe to my YouTube channel so you don't miss our future events. I look forward to seeing you next time in the zone.